Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, the Visio webinar, the Quick Start Guide. I'm Christine Irons. I will be presenting the webinar over the next hour. The webinar runs until 1 o'clock. We're going to have a lot of fun with Visio today. I will go through with you the outline of what we're going to cover, and we will definitely dive hands into the Visio application and take a look at a few things, give you some guides and some tips to get you going. But before we start, I am going to just tell you a little bit about myself and the company that I work for. So as I said, I'm Christine. I've been working for JN Software and CompuEase now for, I guess, going on 3 years already. I work as a software instructor, and I also create courseware for the companies. Before I started working for JN and CompuEase, I was working in Toronto actually for York University, and basically doing the same kind of thing. I was an instructional designer, courseware designer, trainer, that type of thing. So I have a lot of experience with technical training, all of the Microsoft products, Visio. And just a little quick tidbit about myself. And okay, guys, for those of you that have attended the webinars before that I've been presenting, I will try to think of another thing that I'm interested in other than technical training. But other than technical training, what I do on the side all the time is singing, really into music. And I'm actually the lead singer of the ABBA tribute band in Ottawa, the SOS, the ABBA Experience. We were doing actually a lot before we went into COVID lockdown about a year ago. So doing a lot of shows around Ontario, and we had some bookings down in the States. But, you know, over the last year, we haven't really been doing that much music, but hopefully, you know, we see a light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, I'll think of something else that interests me. But honestly, my passion is teaching. My other passion is music. So that's what you're getting today. Okay, so before we actually start, I want to make sure you guys are comfortable with Ring Central. I know we have a lot of people that have taken the webinars before, but we have a lot of new people today, and you may not be as familiar with the Ring Central application that you're using to watch this webinar. If you mouse over your screen near the bottom of your screen, I think it is, you will get, let's see if I can move this. I'll turn off my video. I'll turn off my video partway through the presentation so it doesn't cover the screen, but you'll have a little control toolbar on your screen, and there is a little chat button. That's what I really wanted to point out. You can load the chat window for a couple of reasons. One is if you're having any technical issues, pop a chat in. We have Melanie from our company on hand right now. She will help you with any technical issues you're having. Also, if you have any questions about the webinar, questions about the Visio application, put it into the chat. What we want to do is we want the webinar to run smoothly, so I'm not going to look at the chat while I'm actually running the webinar, just so we sort of get a smooth 45 minutes or so. And then at the end of the webinar, I'll take a look at the chat. I will answer all of your questions. If you think about things while I'm running the webinar, put it in. If you want to wait till the end, put your chats in, okay? But there is that little chat button on the control toolbar. And if you have any issues like your internet drops during the webinar, you can just reconnect again. So if you go back to that email that was sent to you, the invite, you can just connect again through Ring Central. If you ended up using your phone to dial in to listen to the webinar, you can just dial in again. So don't worry if you get dropped, reconnect. Okay, so who are JN Software and CompuEase? I know it can be confusing when I mention two different companies that I work for. but they're actually sister companies. It really just depends on where you are booking your training from or your consultation services, that type of thing. If you are in Ottawa or the Quebec area, you would be going through CompuEase to book your training. If you were anywhere else in Canada or the United States, you would be going through JN Software, but they are sister companies, so they provide the same training. JN Software has been around since 2002, and JN Software provides training, online training, as well as public and private sessions at your location if you want, as well as the online training. And by the way, anytime I mention online training to you guys, it's a live instructor. It's always a live instructor. You will never get pre-recorded training. And JN Software also provides consulting services and database development services if you need a database created. Okay, CompuEase has been around since 1988 in Ottawa and the Quebec area. And again, we offer the online training as well as the in-class public training, because we do have a really nice facility, brand new big facility downtown Ottawa on Albert Street. And you can come for public classes, or you can do more private classes at your location. We can do it over the internet, over the web, which, yeah, we've been doing that for the last year. We haven't really been running the public classes, but, you know, eventually we'll get back into the public classes. But we provide the one-on-one private group training, either on site or online. So many, many options for your training and consulting services. So what makes the companies stand out from other companies? One is that we do provide very fast quality customer service. So you will find that there's a very quick turnaround if you send an email, or you'll notice, and I'll show you the websites at the end of today's webinar, but there is an online chat feature if you prefer to do that rather than call in or send an email, but it's a really quick turnaround. And all of the trainers that we use for our courses, they're highly skilled, experienced professional trainers. And the public courses, what's really cool is the public courses are guaranteed to run. So if you register for a course and you happen to find out at the time, maybe it's the middle of summertime and things are a little bit slower with training, everybody's on vacation, you find out that you're the only person enrolled in the class is guaranteed to run. You never have to worry about the class being canceled. And if you do attend any of our technical training courses and you felt that you didn't learn as much as you expected to learn, or you're still confused, we do have a learn and come back free policy. So you can request to take the course again for free. We also, for the technical courses, we offer a 24/7 after training support. So you take a technical course like Visio, and you will be sent a voucher for free 24/7 free 24/7 training support. And you have a certain amount of time. It will tell you in the email, but you have a certain amount of time to trigger the voucher. And then after you trigger the voucher, you will have, you know, a certain amount of time to use it, like a month to use it 24/7. And by the way, we do offer both software and professional skills training. So this just gives you an idea of the kind of thing that you can take through the companies, and we are constantly adding to it. So definitely all of your Microsoft software we offer training in, usually several different levels depending on what you're taking. We offer training for Adobe, for programming and specialty courses. But like I said, we also offer professional skills training. So things like time management and project management and team building, communication skills. And like I said, we're always adding to this list. So you definitely want to keep checking the website. And you know what? If you don't see something here that you're interested in taking, just contact us. It's happened several times that it just doesn't happen to be listed on our website, and you reach out, contact us, and 99.9% of the time we can provide the training. And the last thing is that if you guys are taking this webinar with us, the nice thing is we also offer to the webinar participants a quick 20-minute consult if you want to take advantage of this. So if you're not sure what you need, if you're not sure what kind of training, or you know what kind of training but you don't know what levels, or it could even be just consultation services or something like that, you can set up a time to talk to somebody at the company. What we'll do is we will identify your strengths, we'll identify your gaps, we'll just make suggestions. It could be training courses, it could be just simply, we have so many free resources, we have so many tips and tricks on YouTube, and we're constantly posting articles on Facebook, we have the blogs, we have the consultation services. So it's honestly, it's no pressure. So don't even think you're going to be pressured that this is like a sales kind of thing. It's just that we love to talk to people. We will just talk to you. We'll give you an idea of what we suggest. It will be totally up to you if you want to take it. It's just a really good way of figuring out what you need. So take advantage of it. Great for attending this webinar. Great perk. Okay. So what are we going to cover in this webinar? What I'll do is, just so this doesn't block it, turn off my video. What are we going to cover in this webinar? First of all, I'm going to talk about what Visio has to offer, because I've taught the Visio course so many times, and I usually ask the class what they think Visio is. And I always get the same two answers, which I'll get into in just a few minutes. I will bet you Visio offers so much more than you think. Okay, so we'll see in a few minutes. I'm also going to give you a quick start, like a quick guide to creating your diagrams with impact, because you could be the best technical person using software, creating your diagrams, but if you don't understand what goes into creating a diagram to capture your audience's attention, and also to make them understand your story, which you're telling through your diagrams, then all that technical skill that you have, I don't want to say it goes to waste, but you know, you're going to go to all that work, you might as well make an impact. So we'll talk about some quick guides for that. Then yes, we will dive into loading Visio. I will show you Visio. It's totally up to you guys if you want to do hands-on. If you happen to have Visio and you want to play around with me, it's just that I know it's difficult to watch the webinar and do hands-on. Usually the webinars are designed that you can watch the webinar and then go off afterwards and play with it. Up to you though, but I will show you, I'll talk about what templates, stencils, and shapes are. I'll give you some tips for putting your shapes on your sheets, so creating your diagrams, aligning your shapes, which is a big thing, adding text to your shapes, connecting your shapes, and then adding styles to a shape. And I think what I'll probably do too, I think I'll have the time to, after I teach you how to put your shapes on, align your shapes, connect them, put text on, I am going to show you how quick it is to set up a really quick flow chart. There are a couple of tips I can give you, and you're going to be surprised at how fast you can create a flow chart if you know how to do this. So let's dive into it. So what is Microsoft Visio? The application that has been stereotyped over the years. So remember I was saying to you, I always ask the class, what do you think Visio is? And I always get the same two answers. I get flow charts and I get org charts, organizational charts, which absolutely, yes, Visio does a really good job with flowcharts. and organizational charts. But let me show you everything Visio can do, or just about everything Visio can do. So flow charts. I was just talking about flow charts. Yeah, Visio is very good for flow charts. On the right-hand side, we have a regular flow chart. On the left side, we have a cross-functional flow chart. So basically, flow charts are a step-by-step approach to solving a task or organizing a workflow process kind of thing. And the difference between a cross-functional flow chart and a regular flow chart is cross-functional flow charts have swim lanes. So if you see these horizontal swim lanes, these rows of information, or they could be columns. It's just that this flow chart was created with horizontal swim lanes. Swim lanes are, it kind of shows who does what in a process, and it's up to you how you organize your swim lanes. This one is organized as if I worked in a university. So we have a student swim lane, administration, and it kind of shows the process as you go through the swim lanes, where it starts with the student and then it goes down to the administration. It may end up going back to the student. If not, it goes down to the registrar. That's what a cross-functional flow chart is, as opposed to your basic flow chart. But it's a step-by-step process. And then the org chart that I was just talking about is, it shows the structure of an organization and the relationship between positions or jobs. So you could start with a VP at the top, or a president at the top, some kind of executive, and then the managers that work for the executive, and then the staff that work for the managers, and these can grow very big. So those are the two that I was talking about. Everybody thinks, okay, that's what Visio is. But Visio also can allow you to create network diagrams. So visually understand how a computer network is set up. And it comes with all of these shapes. You have computers and servers and clouds and hubs, and you just put it all together. You can create 3D maps, believe it or not. So if you want to create a poster or a brochure or an invitation, you can do a 3D map. It's basically just dragging shapes on, drag your houses on, your trees, your streets. Honestly, guys, Visio is actually quite simple. There are a few little quirky things about it, but once you know how to put your shapes on, yeah, pretty easy. You can create floor plans, and you can create the floor plans to scale. So you can actually go in and you can say to Visio, okay, for this floor plan, I want 1 inch to equal 10 feet, or 1 centimeter to meters. Sorry, guys, I'm old school still. But every floor plan you do, you can decide what your scale is, and even the furniture that you put in, and it comes with all of this furniture, it can all be to scale. You can do brainstorming ideas. So when you want to creatively find a solution to problems. Gantt charts, believe it or not. I'm not sure if some of you guys were in my webinar last month. I did a webinar on Excel versus Project, and I showed you around Project. And one of the big things about Microsoft Project, the reason that people will switch to it, is that Project provides Gantt charts, which is a visual of your tasks. So if you have a big task list and you want to see a visual of it, Microsoft Project can create these bars for each task, and depending on how long the bar is, that's a longer task, and your tasks can be linked together so that if one task gets delayed, another task gets delayed. That's what's great about Project. But Visio also offers Gantt charts. It's definitely more basic than Project, but if you know anything about Project, you're going to find that the skills in putting together a Gantt chart and working with a Gantt chart, it's the same kind of skills in Project. You wouldn't find it difficult at all to work with the Gantt charts in Project. It's just that you wouldn't even think that Visio could do something like this. Timelines. So broad overviews of sequences of events. And this is just scratching the surface. There are hundreds of diagrams that you can create in Visio. So not just your flow charts and your org charts. So let's take a look at some guidelines. I was talking about how are you going to make an impact with your diagram. So put the technical aside. What can you do when you are creating your diagrams to actually make an impact? There's a lot more that goes into document creation of any type, actually, especially documents that convey messages through pictures. I'm a big supporter of using pictures to convey your messages. I teach PowerPoint, dashboards in Excel. I did a dashboards webinar. It's like taking your data and turning it into a picture. And anytime that you're going to show people a story through a picture, you need to understand certain principles behind conveying your message in the clearest possible manner without cluttering or overwhelming the senses. So let's take a quick look at some of the guidelines here. First of all, now I did show this in my dashboards course. This is actually the new updated version of the color.adobe.com site that I like so much. Because one of the things that you guys should keep in mind when you are putting together a Visio diagram or a PowerPoint or like I said, a dashboard, is don't overwhelm people with color. We usually try to get people to stick to approximately 3 colors in their diagram. Again, this is just a guide. If you use 4 colors, it's not going to make or break the bank. But try to stick to about 3 colors. And the color.adobe.com site is fantastic because you can come up with a main color that you want to use for your diagram, and then you need to choose, I don't know, 2, 3 other colors to go with that color. And certain colors work really well, harmonize with certain colors, and certain colors don't. And this site, you can put in what color you want as your main color, and then you can find out what colors you can choose that will harmonize with that main color. Now, over here on the left, I have it set up to analogous to show you colors that are kind of similar that go with this color, but you can choose other things like monochromatic, triad. Actually, triad is really popular in Visio. Triad, what it will do is it will show you colors on the opposite side of the spectrum that will go really well with this color. So it's a really nice way of finding colors for your diagrams. Check it out sometime. But it does play a very important role, colors. First of all, the color scheme that you choose can provide contrast between different objects. And you can also use various tints and shades of a color to indicate a relationship between objects. And of course, I have examples here for you. So in this case, and this was done in Visio, we have computers, we have printers, we have a hub. So they're using color to indicate the differences between a hub, the printers, the computers. But if you notice, some of the computers are laptops, some of them are desktops. So what they did is they went with red for all of the computers, but then they used various tints or shades of red to just show the difference between the laptops and the PCs. So it's not like you're introducing a whole new other color like purple for your laptops as opposed to red for your PCs kind of thing. You can use various tints and shades, and it doesn't count as your 3 colors. Or in this case, the same kind of diagram, but what they're using the tints or shades for is to indicate how strong a CPU, like how powerful the computer is. So the darker the color, the more powerful the computer or laptop. The lighter it gets, the less powerful it is. And I would add a legend down here, and you can do that in Visio. You can add a legend to indicate what the different colors mean, the different shades. Or in this case, they're just using color or different colors to make process steps clearer. So we have start and end shapes that are a darker blue, and then we have different process shapes, and they're just using the color to indicate different steps in the process. But as you can see, color plays a really important role. So limit your colors. You don't want your diagrams to start looking like circus publications. Okay, limit your colors. And just as a little design idea, you don't have to just use shapes in Visio. You can insert pictures, insert photos, just the same way that you would do in Word and Excel with the insert picture option. And sometimes it can make your diagrams more interesting, and maybe there are steps in the process that are more clearly explained with a picture. So many different options. Then when it comes to fonts, so we talked about colors. When it comes to fonts, not only does the proper font make your diagram more legible, but it also makes it look right. Advertisers rely really heavily on specific fonts to convey messages. They've done all these brain studies on how people see things with fonts. People that create Visio diagrams for a living, or any kind of diagram, I guess, they suggest that you stick to one font for your diagram. If you have to make different areas of your diagram stand out, don't change the font. Do something like make it bold or make it bigger, but try to just stick to one font throughout the diagram. And when it comes to fonts, you have two different types of fonts: sans serif fonts and serif fonts. The sans serif fonts that you see up here at the top are the kind of fonts like Arial, Calibri, the ones that are more kind of blocky kind of text, whereas the serif fonts like your Times Roman, they have these little curly cues that kind of lead the eye. I don't know if you can tell, but you know, at the edges of the ends of all your letters, it's fancier. It leads the eye. The idea is it's supposed to be more like handwriting that makes you read faster because it reads the eye from, or gets your eye to read from one letter to the other. If you're doing a technical diagrams, you should stick with the sans serif fonts, the Arials, the Calibri. And I'll give you an example of a poor font choice. Because technical diagrams usually have sans serif fonts, I saw a technical diagram where somebody created a diagram to illustrate a new technology. But the thing is, they used a Times Roman font for this new technology diagram, and it actually made the diagram feel outdated, kind of well-worn. So they really do make a big difference. So try to use sans serif if you're doing a technology-related diagram. A tip, if you have an associated article, so maybe there's a paper that's written and then you need this Visio diagram to go with the paper, match the font to whatever the article is. That's a tip, unless again it's technical and your article's in Times Roman. Although these days the default font for Word is Calibri anyway. It's a sans serif font. Like I said, use a single font. You can use color contrast, so white on dark, dark on white. And when I say contrast, I don't just mean white and black. You could have navy with a white font, that kind of thing. And with handwritten fonts, like I think for this diagram, I might have used Comic, which is kind of like a handwritten font. If you're going to use handwritten fonts, only do it if you're also using hand-drawn objects. So there are styles in Visio, I'll show you, where you can turn your Visio diagram into what looks like a hand-drawn object. If it's hand-drawn, go ahead and use your handwritten fonts. I wouldn't use handwritten fonts with your regular, everyday kind of diagram shapes. And if you're using swooping lines like this, which you can also do in Visio, these swooping lines rather than 90-degree line kind of thing, you can even get more elegant with your fonts. So everything's kind of interrelated. Color, fonts, the lines that connect. Oh, and I found this when I was putting together this webinar. I just thought this was too cool. So I decided to include this in my PowerPoint presentation. There is a website. I added it to the bottom in case any of you are interested. You can jot this down, or you can request that we send you the link. We can do that too. But if you're ever struggling when you're doing something, whether it's a diagram in Visio or your dashboard or whatever, and you're struggling to choose the right font to convey the right message, because it's really important. If you ever struggle, there's this poster that you can buy on this website, which I'm going to buy. I'm going to put it up on my wall. But the idea is it has approximately 45 standard fonts that everybody should have. And you start where it says start here. And I know it might be blurry on your end, but I'll just give you an idea. So you start here, and then it asks you a question like, do you want the typeface to look? And then you go to this first shape here, and it says modern or traditional. So your purpose. If you choose the first one, you go out the top. If you choose the bottom one, you go out the bottom. It's that simple. So let's say I want whatever I'm doing, to look modern. So I go out the top, and then it says, are you using it for, and then you've got headings or body text. So let's say I'm doing headings. This is the font I want to choose for headings. I go out the top. Should it look professional or personal? Let's say in this case, it's professional I want. And I'll go up here. So then should it be neutral or friendly? So let's say I want it to be friendly. And after answering all those questions, it then says, great fonts then to convey your message would be Gotham or Avener or Gibson. And it gives you suggestions for great fonts. So you can buy this poster, put it up on your wall, and if you're ever struggling, there you go. This was just too cool to pass up. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next slide. If you didn't get a chance to write this down, but you're interested, just ask us. Okay, so the other thing is be consistent with your lines that connect your objects. Actually, consistency is everything in shapes, lines, and text, but specifically lines. So if you use a specific type of line somewhere in your diagram to mean something, don't use that same line to mean something different somewhere else in your diagram. So an example here I have on the left is an org chart, and there's a dashed line, and what this dashed line means is it's an indirect report. So this person indirectly reports to this manager. So if I'm going to use the dashed line somewhere else, it should mean exactly the same thing, an indirect report. Or consider the thickness of your lines. I have seen diagrams like this where they will thicken up the lines. Now that's okay if you're using a thicker font or you've got thicker borders, but you want to be consistent. Don't have a nice clean font, clean lines around your shapes, and then have really thick connecting lines. So you want to do something like this. So match your fonts to your connector lines. Strive for balance, basically. And then white space. White space is referred to as negative space in your diagram. So it's the area of the diagram, like the portion that's left unused, and it's very important to get right. So the white space between the different shapes that you have. And I know it's really tempting if you create a diagram in Visio and you don't have a lot of shapes, it's really tempting to start dragging the shapes further apart to stretch them out so that it fills up your whole page. But it actually creates a disconnect between your shapes. So if you look between these two, the left and the right is actually easier to understand than the left is with that disconnect, because there's so much white space. Plus, you also want to maintain consistent spacing between your shapes. And I get asked this a lot in my Visio courses. When I create a diagram, should I create a diagram from top down or left to right? And the suggestion is that you flow data from left to right. Because we naturally read text here in North America anyway, we naturally read text from left to right, then top to bottom. That's just logical for us. So the suggestion is, don't do a top-down diagram, do a left-right if you can. And you can turn your page landscape. And if you're going to have return lines in your Visio diagram, so return lines are where you go through the process and you get to a step in the process where, you know, in this case, if something's rejected, you don't move on in the process, you return to a step earlier in the process. Put your return lines under your diagram, not on top of your diagram. So not coming out of the top, because like I just said, we read left to right, top to bottom. So the first thing that we're starting to read here in the diagram is we're starting to actually go through the diagram. So the next step after we're going through the diagram is to go underneath the diagram. So you want your return lines underneath. And if you have more than one return line, try not to cross them. I know that there is a little method that you can do in Visio where if you have two return lines crossing, it puts a little kind of like a hill or a blip kind of to show that the lines are crossing, like one's kind of going under a bridge. That's kind of what it looks like. But it really does get confusing when your return lines cross. So if you can, try not to cross them. And then things have been changing over time. So some design elements have become more flexible over time. I was talking about the flowcharts earlier. I didn't realize, actually, when I first started in Visio, before I started teaching Visio and I had to create my first flowchart, I didn't realize that each shape actually meant something in a diagram. So what I did is I created my flowchart and I just chose any shape and just filled them in with text. I didn't know that this kind of shape, this oval, was a start end shape. So you start your diagram and then you end your process. These diamonds here, which I'm talking about specifically, these diamonds are decision shapes. This is what it has always been like with flowcharts. Diamond shapes represent a decision. So if it's yes, you go one way. If it's no, you go another way. The thing is, a lot of people don't realize that these shapes represent something. I mean, the person that's creating the diagram might, if they've been doing a lot of Visio diagrams, but people that are reading the diagrams, they may not know that these shapes represent something specific. Not only that, but when you use a diamond as a decision shape, it means that you're going to break that left to right flow, because it usually happens that you're going to come out one side for a yes or a no, but then you're going to come out of the top or the bottom for the other option. So you could be branching off and then moving down your flow chart. So it's breaking that left to right flow. So I am now finding that a lot of people are creating flow charts like this, where they're not using the diamond shape. They're using something like, you could use any shape, but this is a process shape. And then they just have the two connector lines coming out. So you're still continuing that left-right flow. You're not just suddenly going down below. So you could have a connector line coming out of yes and a connector line coming out of no, kind of thing. So things have changed a lot over time, guys. You can now start doing things like this. And then lastly, go minimal. I talk about this a lot with dashboards in PowerPoint. Visio is the same. And trust me, it's harder than it sounds, but try to reduce the number of objects as much as possible. Get to the essence of the subject. And I hate to say it, and I'm an IT person, so I can say this. IT people tend to add as much detail as possible. And then it's just absolutely overwhelming for the people trying to read the chart. So if you've added objects that aren't really relevant, they're sort of nice to have, remove them, or see if you can combine information so that you can reduce the number of objects. So this increases the focus point of the diagram. You can just see the difference. Not only is this a top-down diagram and this is a flow left to right, which I suggested, but this would be easier to understand than this. I would look at this diagram on the left and think to myself, I don't even want to tackle this, try to figure this out. But yeah, it's definitely a lot more difficult than it sounds. Okay, so let's take a look at Visio. Let me show you Visio. I have, let me just flip over to it here. I have Visio 2013 installed, but I'll tell you Visio 2013 and 2016 are almost identical. Where you're going to see a difference is this opening screen. So when you first load Visio, they ask if you want to do a blank drawing or if you want to use templates. And this opening screen looks different depending on what version you're in. But somewhere on your opening screen, you should have categories of templates. So up here at the top, I have things like flow charts, floor plans, business, that kind of thing. So I could click on business as an example, and it would give me a whole bunch of templates I can create for business. And then if I want to go back to the main screen, I can click home up here, or I can click the back button. Either one will get you back to the main screen. But Visio is very different than Word and Excel. So if I were creating a document in Word or Excel, 99% of the time, I start with a blank document. In Visio, I highly suggest you do not start with a blank drawing. You want to start with an actual template, like a flowchart template or an org chart template, because templates come with stencils. Stencils come with shapes. These are the three big things you work with in Visio: templates, stencils, and shapes. Your diagram is made up of shapes that are on a stencil. If you load a blank drawing, you will not have any stencils loaded, which means when you want to put shapes on your diagram, you're going to have to search for every shape you want to add to your diagram, or you're going to have to search for stencils to load for your blank diagram. If you load a template, it will come with the stencils you need. So 99% of the time in Visio, I start with a template. What I'm going to do for my first example is I'm going to start with a basic diagram. And then later I'll show you a flow chart. But I'll click on basic diagram. Now, if you double click the template, I'll tell you it defaults to measurements in millimeters and centimeters, like the metric system. So your rulers, if you're following your rulers, it's all in metric. If you want the choice of it being in inches or in metric, I would suggest just single clicking. So if I click once, it then asks me, do you want metric or US? Like I said, I'm still really old school, so I'm going to choose US units and then create. So even though I loaded a template, it's still a blank sheet. So you're still starting from scratch, but over here on the left, you have stencils. Now the basic shape template that I loaded comes with 4 stencils. So over here on the left, I have basic shapes, arrow shapes, decorative shapes, graph and math shapes. Like pretty much everything I need to create a basic diagram. Basic shape diagram. But you're not just stuck with the stencils that you see listed here. You can always add more stencils, and you can add individual shapes. If you want to add more stencils, now this threw me off when I first started in Visio. If you look just up above where it says more shapes, I think this should have been named more stencils, because you're not actually adding individual shapes, you're actually loading more stencils by clicking on more shapes. So if I click on more shapes, it has the categories that I was just pointing out: business, flow chart, general. Let's say I want, I'll go to flow chart for fun. And let's say I want something like the stencil for the, I don't know, I haven't even seen Workflow Objects 3D. Let me load that and see what it is. Oh, there you go. So it's added Workflow Objects 3D, look, little people, CD-ROMs, all this cool stuff. But now I have 5 stencils listed here. If you want to get rid of a stencil, you could just right-click a stencil and you can delete it. Okay, but I now have 5 stencils loaded. If you want to search for a very specific shape, like maybe you wanted, for some reason, a plant, like the plants that you grow, or it could be the building a plant. If you want to search for a specific shape, up here at the top where it says stencils and then search, you click on search, you type in a keyword, plant, press enter, and it should do a pretty quick search, and it comes up with anything that has the keyword plants in Visio, and you could just drag on one of these shapes. So it's really easy loading a whole stencil or loading specific shapes. If you did search for a shape, then it keeps you on this, it's not really a stencil, but it keeps you on this search screen that shows you all the different shapes. All you have to do is go back up to the top where your search was and click back on stencils, and you'll go back to these standard stencils. Then it's a matter of dragging your shapes onto your diagram. So let me give you a few tips here. I'll go to my, I'll have to scroll up. I have so many stencils now. Basic shapes, your squares, your rectangles, and things like that. I'm going to drag a square onto my sheet. Now watch this as I drag it on. As I get close to the center, you see guides popping up. Whether it's a vertical guide, a horizontal guide, or if you're right in the center, you know you're dead center because you get the vertical and the horizontal crossing. So the first shape you add to a sheet, what Visio wants to do is it wants to guide you to placing the shape compared to the sheet, where it is on the sheet overall. So right now what I'm going to do is just drop it right in the center. From this point on, when I drag a shape on, so I'll drag another square on here, I will no longer get the guides for the sheet where it is centered or vertical or horizontal. I will get guides compared to the shape that's already there. So aligning this new shape with the shape that's already there. So Visio makes it really easy to line up your shapes. Not only that, but as I get, well, I'll do from this side. As I get closer to the shape, you'll notice in a second, if you look at the bottom, where that gap is between the two shapes at the bottom, you see a little arrow pointing left and right. This is indicating that you're, and I don't remember what it is, it's something like 0.3 inches or something like that from the first shape. So there is a standard distance that it will tell you when you're that close to a shape, but you don't have to follow that. I could drop this shape further away, say about here, with a bigger gap. And when I drag another shape on, so if I come over here, as I get closer, it will ignore that 0.3 gap and it will look at the other shape and it will say, hey, you know what? Now you are the same distance on the right as you were to the one on the left. So it's so easy to line things up. Another thing that Visio offers to align and move your objects is guides that you can actually drag out of your rulers. So I'm going to put my cursor up where my horizontal ruler is up here at the top. And as I get to the edge, you'll notice my cursor turns to a double-headed arrow. And if I drag my guide down, I can drag as many guides as I need. These don't print, by the way. They're guides for you. They don't print. You can delete them. I'll show you how to delete them. But the idea is I can snap shapes to the guide. So let's say I drag this shape up and put it up against the guide, snap it to the guide, snap this shape to the guide. Then when I want to move those two shapes without moving this one, but keep them aligned, I just move the guide up and down. If you ever want to delete a guide, you just click on the guide so it's blue and you press delete on your keyboard. Click, delete, click, delete. But like I said, they don't print, so you can keep them loaded if you want. So many ways of aligning your shapes. So it's as simple as dragging and dropping your shapes. Now, the next thing that you want to do is you want to add text to your shapes. And again, Visio makes it really easy. You just click on the text and type. So I can click on the shape here and type my new text. And there you go. If you want to format your text, make the font bigger, the font a different color or bold, just click on the shape that has the text and do your typical font formatting that you would do in Word and Excel. On your home ribbon, you have that same group of buttons that you have in Word and Excel. So you can bold, I can make it bigger, text, change the font. But I'll give you guys a big tip here. So changing the look of the font is easy with the font group up here. What's a little bit quirky about Visio is if you want to move the text inside your shape. If you want to move the text inside your shape, you need to use a text tool. So up on your home ribbon, there is a group of buttons called tools. And there is a little button that I'm pointing to right now in the bottom right corner of the tools. It looks like a little square with a little arrow. This is your text block tool. So what you have to do is you have to click your text block tool, go and click on your text to select it. And I know it looks like it selects the shape, but it's actually selecting the text. And you can see I can actually move the text or rotate the text. You can actually move it outside the shape. It's just that it's white right now, so you won't see it. But no matter where you move the text, it's still associated with that shape. So if you move the shape, it will, what I'll do is I'll move it like this. I'll go back up and click my pointer tool. That's really important. Always go back to your pointer tool. And then it moves. And then when it comes to connecting your shapes, you need to be aware that there are two types of connections in Visio. There are static connections and dynamic connections. I'm going to start with showing you a static connection. So again, up in that tools area is a connector tool. So if I click the connector tool and I mouse over a shape, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but there are these tiny little black dots on the edges of the shape. To create a static connection, and I'll show you what happens with a static, you put your cursor over a connection point, so you get a little green square, and you hold your left button and you drag to another connection point on another shape, so you get that little green square, and it says glue to connection point, and you let go. You've created a static connection. So let me show you what a static connection does. I'll go back to my pointer. I'm going to move these over a little bit. A static connection, if you were to drag your shapes around, so I'm going to go and put this on the left side. See how it keeps your connector glued exactly to the connection that you glued it to? So it sometimes creates this big long line just to be able to stay connected to that point. Static, point to point, as opposed to if I click on the connector tool and I go to the center of the shape and drag from center to center, it says glue to shape. That's a dynamic connection. So I'll go back to my pointer tool. I'll drag this over. And a point or a shape to shape takes the shortest route. So when you start dragging your diagrams around, it will switch where it's connected to keep the shortest point. I find I use more dynamic, this one that I just showed you, in most of my diagrams. I do have some reasons to use a static once in a while, but most of the time I want it to adjust itself. Okay guys, so I'm just going to take 1 minute just to show you how fast I can set up a flowchart diagram. So I've already started a template here that is a flowchart template that comes with flowchart shapes. Let me show you what you can do. I can drag a process shape on. Actually, I'll drag a start end shape on here. Then I want to add a process shape. Rather than drag and have to create a connection, I'll mouse over this process shape or sorry, the start end shape, and you get 4 little arrows, little blue arrows, and when you mouse over the arrows, it will show you the first 4 shapes that are over on the stencil and give you the option of adding these. So I can add a process, and then I can come over here, mouse over the arrow. I'm going to add a decision. I'm going to mouse over the decision shape. Maybe I'll go down this way and add a process shape. Maybe out of the decision, I'm also going this way, and I'm going to add another process. And then at the end of this, I'm going to add a start end. Do you see how fast I put that diagram together? And by the way, when you come out of a decision shape here, you can double click. Well, actually, you could double click any line and you can add text. So this could be the, if I double click, this could be the yes route. I could double click here. This is the no route. And then to fancy it up, I could go up to my design ribbon and I have styles. So really quick way of making your diagram look really cool. I just haven't added text to it. I just want to save time for your questions. And variants. So this should give you a good start on creating your diagrams. It's as simple as loading your templates, dragging your shapes on, connecting your shapes, adding your text. You see how easy that was. And if it's a flow chart, mousing over and then just connecting your shapes this way so you don't have to do all of your separate connections. And you've got a diagram. Okay, I'm just going to quickly show you while you put your chats in. Give me a minute here. Just in case you guys are interested in anything like the training or the consulting, just go ahead and start putting your messages in. I will answer your questions, but I've got you over on the JN software site right now. If you're interested in taking courses, there is this course option here. You can go to all courses and it will list all of the courses available. You can just scroll down. Oh, here's Visio. You can go to Visio. We offer level 1, level 2. We even have creating accessible documents in Visio. So for people that have low vision and use screen readers, that type of thing. But you just click the register now button and you can put in how many you want, add it. These are our public courses, by the way. You can always request private courses, and then you can use your own course files. You know, we can customize it, that type of thing. Also, we have the free webinars up at the top of the website here, so you can scroll through and see what the next webinar is. I have another OneNote webinar coming up as well if you're interested in that. We have free resources, so we have blogs. We have Facebook pages, everything, YouTube channels. And it's the same on the CompUE site, by the way. So on the CompUE site, you have your course list. You see the different courses. There's your Visio. And it's very easy to register. Again, these are public classes, but you can request private classes. It's more economical if you have more than 4 people to request a private class. And then we could center it around to your your needs. And you can just register. You can read about the courses. So pretty straightforward. And again, we have the free webinars, the blog. Check it out sometime. Okay, let me load my chat and see what you guys are saying. So let's see. Hi, Christine. You mentioned combining shapes. So let me go back to Visio. You mentioned combining shapes. I was told one time that you shouldn't combine more than one point or idea in one shape. But I prefer to combine them as you mentioned where possible, for example. Oh, I see what you mean when I was saying not to make them overwhelming, like split it up in the process. And you know what, Annalise? It was funny because as I mentioned that, I was thinking that too. To me, it's easier to keep an idea per shape. I think I probably worded that incorrectly. It was more the shapes that you add that are the nice to know information. And I see so many diagrams like this where people will add information here or there that it really, when you look at it, it's really not necessary. So I would list them all in one document shape rather than create 5. Is it okay? Okay, I would say I happen to agree with you. one idea per shape. I wouldn't really combine them. Just get rid of the nice to know information, for sure. Also, as told to keep the number of words inside a shape to a minimum, like 2 or 3 words. Oh, you know what? I haven't heard that. That's something I should research. I don't know about a minimum of words, but that makes sense. You definitely don't want to put great big descriptions in. But when it came to look at them later, we didn't understand what they meant. You know, that one I would have to search if there's a suggestion on how many words. You definitely don't want to put big sentences, but you're right. If you just use 2 or 3 words and somebody else is looking at it, they might not understand it. But I can look for that for you, for sure. Helen, thanks, Christine. Useful and informative as always. Love your clear. Aw, thanks, Helen. Or Helen, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I hate pronouncing people's names wrong. I'm glad you liked the webinar. I'm hoping that, I know I'm a minute over right now, but I'm guessing that a lot of you guys are attending the webinar because you don't have Visio and you're actually really interested in what the application can do and whether you want to purchase it, because it is a separate purchase from the regular Microsoft suite. So I'm hoping this gave you guys an idea of how easy it is to put together your diagrams. And kind of might get you or push you to getting that Visio software application, because it actually is a lot of fun and it's great to put things into a picture mode. But I also think that if you have been using Visio, maybe some of the tips that I gave you might make it a little bit easier to put together your diagrams. And there's so much more to Visio than what I just showed you, because they're the different types of diagrams. You can even link data, external data like Excel data, to your Visio diagram. So if you had an organization chart and somebody had an Excel spreadsheet that had all the names and the titles and the departments and whatever of your organization, you can link the Excel file to your diagram, and then if somebody updates the Excel file, it updates your diagram. You can create things called containers and callouts. You can work with layers in Visio. You can create sub-processes. So if you've got a really big organization chart and you want to split it up into a sub kind of organization chart, you can do that. How much is it? Is it a one-time purchase? Thanks for the information, Louise. Oh, thanks, Annalise. Yeah, so it is a one-time purchase, although with the 365 version, they go with subscription version or subscription services now. So if you decide to do the 365 version, it's probably a subscription, but Annalise put that link in for you. I ended up, you can still download the 2013 and the 2016 version. You can get it for a lot cheaper too. That's why I ended up getting the 2013 version. I got it for cheaper, and then it's a full install, and it's absolutely valid. It's all in the up and up. It's not like a pirated copy. Just search for purchase 2016 version kind of thing. What do you recommend regarding text boxes or callouts? How do you add them so it's not ugly and overwhelming? Yeah, and again, Annalise, you are so calling me on this, because callouts are like adding extra shapes that describe a shape. And you're right, if you add too many callouts, they do become overwhelming, and it does actually go against what I was just telling you, where is it really nice to have information? I would only add a call out if it was necessary, but let me just show you here. You've got a call out. This is what I'm talking about. Like if you wanted to add something like this, where you can add a thought, you can change the text and add a thought. But you can see, just like Annalise was mentioning earlier, it's like adding that extra layer of, you think that you're making things more clear, but because not only are you adding text, you're adding a picture, it can become overwhelming. So the callouts are there for you if you need them. I would say use them sparingly. Don't overwhelm the user. Again, keep it simple. Text boxes I only use text boxes for things like titles. Like I would go up to the home ribbon and there is a button for text, and I would add a text box to put a title in of my diagram. I don't actually use text boxes. I don't know, some people do add text boxes as kind of, instead of putting a call out, they'll add a text box. But again, you're really just overwhelming the user with extra information if it's not necessary. But I'll do it with the titles. What do you, oh, you said, I use them to list details of a step such as document titles. Details of a step such as document titles. Oh, like if there's a document associated with it and you want to give the document title? Because I'm not sure what you mean by details of a step such as document titles for clinical assessments. So you do the text box as opposed to adding a call out for clinical assessments. I mean, the nice thing about a text box as opposed to a call out is call outs always have these connection lines, which adds that extra visual, which you may not need. A text box might be a little bit cleaner. Plus, you don't have to put a border around a text box. You have the options of no border once you add them. So maybe they're not as overwhelming to the senses. I would add a clinical assessment for the step and then a call out to say which specific assessments are done. Do you add a lot of call outs? Is that what you're asking? Because, yeah, okay. It's just, again, Annalise, they were just guides just from a lot of reading that I've done and a lot of brain studies with if there are too many images and too many pictures, whether the person consciously thinks this or not, they get overwhelmed with what's there on the sheet, and then they just, it's a choice. Like they look at the diagram and they have a choice of, okay, am I going to tackle this, or no, it's too overwhelming, and mostly they go with no, or they start and then they just fade out. So yeah, it's either cram them into the box or add a call out. I would, yeah, as long as it's not too much text, I think I would opt for putting it into the box, because again, when you add it as a call out, you're adding it as a picture plus text. But that's just my preference. So I would just take that as a guide. Sorry, I didn't see having issues adding a picture into an org chart coin. You're having issues. So for example, when you load an org chart, oh, and by the way, when you start an org chart, it always wants to run a wizard to connect you to an external data file. You can just cancel it. But when you add things like, and you've switched it to coin. So, okay, because I haven't used coin before, it looks like you have to actually click here. There's an actual separate text box and a separate picture. So you have to actually click on the little piece that contains the picture. Then you can go up to the insert picture. Oh, so it doesn't let you do the individual pictures. Oh, actually, well, you can see I haven't used coin, but if you click, so it just selects the outside of the shape, then you can do insert picture. So maybe it's where you're clicked. Maybe you did what I did and I clicked, and I happened to be clicked individually here where I thought you had to click, and then picture's grayed out. So just make sure the entire thing for coin is selected. Insert picture. I don't have a picture that I can insert. Maybe that's the issue. Yeah, sorry, Annalise, I couldn't be even more helpful than that. Any other questions, guys? Oh, you're welcome. It worked there. Oh, okay, good, good, good. So that's probably what it was. You did the same thing as me. Okay. Then that is the end of the webinar. Don't forget that we have the OneNote webinar. I think it's the second week of what are we in now? February, March. So if you're ever interested in seeing what OneNote's all about, and I'll even show you how you can do things like connect your Outlook meetings and tasks to your OneNote file and get it all working together, then sign up for the OneNote webinar and I'll see you guys there. But I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thanks everybody for joining our webinar today. Take care. Bye. Thanks. Thanks, Annalise. Thanks, guys.